On January 7, 2026, a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE agent shot and killed 37-year-old Minneapolis resident Renee Nicole Good, an incident that has ignited massive protests across the United States. This event has become a national flashpoint, not just in Minneapolis, but in cities from New York to Miami, Boston, and beyond, sparking debate over federal immigration enforcement, civil rights, and the use of force by law enforcement. In this video, we'll break down what happened and why people are protesting, how this impacts the U.S. government, what it means for small businesses, how nonprofits are affected, and why this moment matters. According to authorities, an ICE officer fatally shot Renee Nicole Good during an enforcement operation in Minneapolis. Federal officials say the agent acted in self-defense after Good allegedly attempted to use her vehicle to strike officers. Video footage that has circulated widely shows Good in her vehicle before the shots were fired, and local leaders have disputed the federal version of events. Good, a 37-year-old mother of three, was reportedly driving near her neighborhood when the encounter occurred. Local authorities, including Mayor Jacob Frey and Governor Tim Walz, have pressed for transparency and accountability, contesting the federal narrative and questioning whether the use of lethal force was justified. Within hours, thousands of people mobilized in protest. Large crowds gathered in Minneapolis, and demonstrations spread to major U.S. cities including New York City, Miami, Boston, Austin, and Philadelphia. Some protests remained peaceful, while others have seen heightened tensions and injuries. The protests are not just about one shooting. They are a broader expression of frustration with federal immigration enforcement practices, particularly the presence of ICE in local communities. Many activists are demanding ICE be removed from cities entirely and called for federal officers to face accountability. This incident will immediately affect the U.S. government's legal and policy framework. 1. Department of Justice and FBI investigations. Federal and state authorities are now conducting investigations. But tensions have risen because federal agencies have restricted local access to key evidence, drawing criticism from state officials. This raises questions about impartial investigations, trust between federal and state law enforcement, rights of the victim's family and the public. 1. Civil rights oversight. Civil rights organizations and lawmakers are calling for federal oversight of ICE practices and clearer rules about when force may be used. Expect congressional hearings, civil rights investigations, possible judicial reviews. 1. Litigation and policy reform. Civil litigation is likely, possibly including wrongful death suits, civil rights claims, challenges to ICE enforcement policies. Public outcry may also pressure leaders to reform training and use of force policies, increase oversight of federal immigration agents. Federal leadership has already defended the agents' actions, but this event will likely remain in legal and political debates for months. Although this began as a law enforcement incident, small businesses feel the effects quickly. 1. Business interruptions in protest areas. In cities where protests have expanded, especially Minneapolis and New York, local businesses have seen reduced foot traffic, property closures, temporary suspensions of operations. This is especially true in districts where demonstrations are concentrated and where law enforcement has increased presence. 1. Labor force anxiety. Small businesses with immigrant employees may face fear and anxiety among staff, higher absenteeism, hesitation to attend work during heightened protests. This can impact operations, deadlines, and productivity in jobs where labor predictability is crucial. Even outside protest zones, the national climate can affect consumer confidence and local spending patterns, which hurt small enterprises already operating on thin margins. The nonprofit sector also experiences ripple effects from this crisis. 1. Legal aid and advocacy organizations providing legal support to immigrants are likely facing increased demand for representation for detainees or deportation cases. Assistance for families caught up in Immigration Enforcement Council in civil rights claims. 1. Immigration advocacy and funding groups focused on immigrant rights may see more engagement and fundraising opportunities, but also increased pressure to respond effectively and transparently. This can strain resources for smaller nonprofits lacking scalable infrastructure. 1. Community safety and civil rights work. Local nonprofits working on community safety, racial justice, and civil liberties are now thrust into frontline roles, including organizing peaceful demonstrations, providing community protection and education, supporting families affected by federal enforcement. These shifts may lead to grant reallocation as donors and foundations respond to urgent needs, potentially drawing funds away from other initiatives. Beyond direct organizational impacts, this incident highlights several larger trends. Federal-local tension. Local officials have openly challenged federal narratives and demanded independent investigations. Public trust in enforcement. Conflicting accounts of how the shooting unfolded have intensified mistrust in immigration enforcement and federal agencies. Polarized political response. Political leaders are split sharply, with federal officials defending the agent and local leaders calling for accountability. This dynamic makes reform debates more urgent and complicated. As protests continue and investigations unfold, Congress may hold hearings focused on immigration enforcement and federal use of force. Civil rights groups will likely pursue litigation and public inquiries. Nonprofits and businesses will adapt to operating in communities with heightened tension and uncertainty. This is not just a momentary headline. It's a potential turning point in how federal immigration powers are viewed, how local communities interact with national law enforcement, and how civil liberties are protected in the context of enforcement operations. The shooting of Renee Good and the nationwide protests it sparked have already had widespread legal, social, and economic impacts. For the government, this means oversight, reform, and possible litigation. For small businesses, it means disruption and workforce anxiety. For nonprofits, it means higher demand and shifting priorities. This story is reshaping conversations about immigration enforcement, civil rights, and federal-local relations, and its effects will be felt long after this moment.